Hi, everyone. My job is to get everyone here really excited. So I have 25 slides about the state of the media industry. My job here is to give you about 20 minutes of content, and then I'm going to take some questions. I'm going to make the mistake of also starting with the most important slide at MoffettNathanson. We are an independent research shop. We've been in business for 7 years, Craig and I and 3 other partners. And we provide fact-based information on the state of the industry, media, telecom, cable. This chart is our most requested chart. It looks at the current state of cord cutting in the US. Now, there are 2 lines here. The dark, more sinister line that's fading at negative 4.2% is the rate of cord cutting, negative 6%, is the rate of cord cutting in all satellite, cable, and telco homes. So in traditional households in America, in the last quarter, we lost 6% of all subscribers, okay? Now there is this new crop of platforms called virtual MVPDs, Sling, DirecTV Now. If I add those back, the rate of decline is 3.4%. Now for those of you who keep score and may remember me being here 2 years ago, we thought we would be bouncing along at -1, -2. So this rate of growth is worse than we thought. And in fact, the rate of growth in traditional cord cutting this year has been worse than we thought. And I want to show you why, okay? It starts with this. This is satellite cord cutting within the US. So satellite's declining at an annual rate of 12%, okay? Just a year or 2 years ago, it was half that rate. This has been a terrible year for satellite pay TV in the US. And why is that? What's happened is DirecTV has started to raise prices and really tighten their standards for who can subscribe to satellite TV. And as a result, you're seeing a real low sign up for new subscribers and higher churn. So this rate of growth, 12% a year, put in perspective, that's about 3.5 to 4 million subscribers a year that are leaving the pay TV ecosystem, okay? Now cable had been steady, but this year too, cable started to contract at a faster rate. And what's happening at cable? The cable operators have decided the same thing as satellite, which is we have to raise prices. The cost of content, most notably sports and broadcast, keeps rising. And the cable operators have figured, okay, at this point in time, whoever's paying for TV is willing to pay for a higher prices. So what you're starting to see is more pricing increases from cable, and cord cutting's picking up at a rate of now -3% for cable, okay? Now, what had been my great salvation to offset the cord cutting at satellite and cable had been these virtual platforms. You call them vMVPDs. But this year, we're starting to see a real slowdown in virtual platforms as well. That's why the rate of cord cutting is picking up. And what's happened is all these virtual MVPDs have started to raise prices aggressively. So 3 years ago, you can get an entry-level package of great content from AT&T for $35. Now it's $65, right? And everyone else has raised prices. So what's happened, as prices have gone up, cord cutting has picked up. And that's the industry's response, is the higher cost of sports and broadcasting is forcing distributors to raise pricing, okay? Now this, to me, is another interesting slide. This looks at viewership the past 7 years. And you would think with all that cord cutting I showed you, all that deceleration or acceleration of cord cutting, viewing behavior would be really different. So the point we always go back to is that live sports and news, despite all that cord cutting, viewership has been really stable the past 7 years, okay? And where the pressure's been seen has been non-live. It's been entertainment, scripted, reality. That's declining at a rate of 6% a year. And this past year, you're seeing double-digit declines in primetime, 15, 16% declines in broadcast primetime in Live Plus 3 ratings, right? So we see what's happening, which is there's a bifurcation. The bundle, in our view, is set for live sports, live news, live events. On demand is going to be the place for entertainment programming, right? That's what you're seeing then. That's the war you've heard everyone talk about today. So the question we have, and we've asked ourselves is, okay, if the bundle is about live sports and live news, and John Skipper was asked that question, we wanted to find out, where does the bundle finally rest in terms of where's cord cutting in the US finally rest? So here's some slides that we think are interesting. We asked customers, we work with Allman Philandry in Boston. We asked 5,000 people, if they were regular sports viewers. And regular sports viewers we define as weekly, daily, or monthly. 53% of households consider themselves a regular sports viewer, okay? 47% are not regular sports viewers. And those 53% of people who watch sports, 90% of those households still pay for the bundle, okay, still pay for TV. For those that don't watch sports regularly, only 67% of them are paying for the bundle. So here, the point I'm making is, look, there's a bifurcation. Those who like sport pay for the bundle. Those that don't like sport are cutting the cord. And the question is, where is that resting place, okay? Then we did some interesting survey work. We want to understand who these people were, who are the sports fans. Maybe surprisingly, not surprisingly, sports fans tend to be more male and more than female. When you look at the demographics by age, there wasn't much of a demographic skew. Sports fans are pretty much the same across all ages. But what shocked us was income. It turns out, and we don't understand why, that sports fans tend to have higher income levels than non-sports fans. And that is positive. If you are raising prices in the bundle for people who like sports, and those families have higher incomes, they're more likely able to sustain those price increases. Then we also asked the sports fans, what other content do you watch? What do you care about? And our assumption was there's a news sports live cohort. And what we see here is that people who are regular sports viewers are also regular news viewers. 84% of people who are sports viewers consider themselves news viewers, right? And if you look at the dark bar that says interest level, people who are not sports viewers don't seem to be fans of any content, right? Sports viewers have more interest in all types of content across all different content genres. So you see where I'm going with this, which is the base of people who pay for TV are going to be sports and news fans, and those that will cut the cord will be non-sports, non-news fans, right? So then we want to understand how big is that cohort of Americans. So right now, if there are 90 million people who take the bundle, 51% we assume to be sports fans, okay? Sports and news fans. Those are going to be my diehards. So 51%, half the country, are in a cohort that are not going to cut the cable. Another 9% are regular sports viewers, unlikely to cut the cable. Then you have regular news viewers, I'm not sure about them. And then you have 14% who are non-sports and non-news viewers. That is my high-risk category of people who are going to cut the cord, okay? So what we then did, further digging into it, the folks who consider themselves sports and news viewers, 91% of Americans who are sports and news viewers still pay for TV the traditional way. Now, all the way over, those non-sports and non-news viewers, only half of that cohort is paying for TV. The cord cutting is coming and will come from people who are not sports and non-news viewers. And just to put a framework on it, this was, I think, what Peter was asking John. The first box to us is that's the diehard. That's the resting base of where cord cutting is going to go right now. So we have 90 million homes at the 50 million, 45 million level. That's the natural home of the sports and news fan. Then you have, another 25% that are regular news viewers, and you have another 8% regular sports. But the real risk here is going to be that red box of 13 million Americans, 14% of the country, who are going to cut the cord. And we think it's going to happen rather quickly, because here's why. When we ask people who've cut the cord why you cut the cord, the number one reason is subscription TV costs too much. And what I just told you when I started was the reason why cord cutting's picked up this year is because everyone from satellite to cable to those virtual platforms have all raised prices, right? So it's a vicious cycle. Prices are going up, and those people who cut the cord are giving the higher prices for reasons to cut the cord. Okay. And what's interesting is, and we asked folks, how often, for those people who stream, how often a week are you streaming? And what you see happening here is that streaming has become, across Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon, a regular behavior. With 40% of people who have Netflix use it daily, right? It's a daily addiction. Another 39% use it a couple times a week, right? So what's happening in real time, people are cutting the cord quickly, prices are going up. Those that are sports and news are staying in the bundle. And those that have left the bundle have left because of pricing and are pretty much replacing their their linear consumption with SVOD consumption. And thus brings us to streaming wars, right? So we're in the middle of the launch of an amazing time for an analyst. I've never been busier in terms of like the questions we get and the research we've been doing to try and understand where this is all going, right? So as you all know, we have 3 launches already, 2 this year and then 2 next year, right? And all different products, but they're launching into a market where consumers are telling you, if you're not a sports and news viewer, you're up for grabs, okay? So we did some survey work with a company called, this is Nielsen with Harris X. We asked folks, how do you know what to watch on streaming? One of the biggest challenges, I think, is there's just too much content. It's only gonna get worse. So we wanted to box a couple things, a couple points jump out. 2 of the top 4 answers were, I watch things that I've heard about or used to watch on broadcast or cable TV, right? And I'll show you that in a second. The second reason people, in terms of what they find, what to stream, what influences them, is word of mouth, right? And I show this to you because we're about to get a bunch of launches with companies that have broadcast content and libraries and pre-existing brands that will help launch them, okay? So I want, one of the things we've said, and we've been outspoken on this, we were much more optimistic on Disney Plus than a lot of the Netflix analysts. We're positive on Disney Plus because we realized that Disney's brands had real connective relationships with customers. And what we did here is just to show people there are 3 studios that control 3/4 of all the films in the world, right? Disney, Fox, Warner Brothers, and Comcast. And those 3 companies are going to launch or will or have launched streaming services this year. TV, you see it's a much more fragmented business, but Warner Brothers is the #1, this is top 100 shows. Warner Brothers, Time Warner produces more popular shows than anyone else in the world. So what John Stankey is gonna lead with is he's gonna have a really, really large catalog of hit content that people want to watch. At the same time, I'll show you in a second, that loss of library content off of Netflix, to me, has some ramifications longer term. It's gonna force Netflix to keep spending more money to replenish their flywheel. Okay, so this is it. Working with Harris X, we asked, again, 5,000 customers of Netflix, what are your favorite shows and how do we define those shows? So if you look at it, Netflix has a really good blend here of originals and acquired. 46 of the top 100 shows that we surveyed are Netflix originals, and 48 are acquired. And also note the long tail. It goes for a long, long way, right? Then we had some Amazon data that I think is really troubling for Amazon. Here's why. Amazon has 20 originals. If you note, the head of the snake is not as big as Netflix's head of the snake. But also, there are 28 shows that consumers tell us that they like on Amazon that are actually not on Amazon, right? So people are using Amazon Prime and don't understand what's actually on the service, which would scare me if I was Amazon Prime. And then last but not least, there's Hulu, and Hulu's model has been mostly acquired, as you know. So something like 75% of all the shows on Hulu are acquired shows. But note how Hulu has one big show. Does anyone want to guess what that show is? Thank you. Does anyone want to guess what the show on Amazon is? What? Miss Maisel, yep. And then on Netflix? Right, but note the scale of just how big Stranger Things is relative to everyone else, right? So then, and one of the frustrations we have as analysts is we can't tell you what the most popular, we can't tell you what people stream on Netflix or any of these services, right? The data is not available. So we do survey work, and this is a survey of people's top 20 shows as of the third quarter of 2019. You see Stranger Things and Orange is the New Black, which both debuted in the third quarter, were very, very popular. But I want to walk you through some interesting data points. The number 3 and the number 4 show, The Office and Friends, right? Hard to believe, but if you've got college-age kids like I do, they watch more Office than any other show I see on Netflix. And you've got high school kids, they're watching Friends. Those 2 shows are going, as you know, right? Giving an advantage in some way, building a new business to NBC and to Warner's, okay? Then what you have is You have Orange is the New Black is canceled. It's over. You have Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and House of Cards. So you have 4 more shows. So 6 out of the top 20 will be leaving the service. And then you have non-originals, meaning you have 11 of the top 20 are non-originals. Things like Breaking Bad and Walking Dead are most popular shows. It's a long way of saying to you that Netflix has to replenish their inventory with more original content. At the same time, their competitors are going to take these shows and try to launch their business on the back of these shows. Okay? And just to put in perspective for how much is being spent right now, this looks at programming expenses in 2019, doesn't include sports, right? Just pure scripted content or non-scripted as well. So Disney, thanks to the Fox acquisition and Disney Film Studio, spends the most, this is on a P&L basis, almost $20 billion of programming expense this year. Comcast is second, AT&T, Time Warner is third, Netflix is fourth, and CBS Viacom, they say it's $13 billion, we have 9. But those are the big 5, and then on the tail, you have some smaller companies. So as we see it, this is a race really between 4 or 5 companies to scale up. And that's what's gonna happen. So our view here is that the next 5 years are gonna be great for consumers, for producers, for people who own facilities, anyone doing hair and makeup. There's never gonna be a more plentiful time for quality content. So just to put in perspective for you, these are numbers that the companies themselves have shared with us on Disney's account. So Disney's gonna go from almost $20 billion to $24 billion in the next 4 or 5 years on original content. That's gonna fuel Disney Plus and Hulu and ESPN Plus. AT&T had an investor day earlier this month. They're also gonna grow by another about $4 or $5 billion. And then Netflix, in our model, there's another $5 or $6 billion of P&L to come. So if you add it together, there's about $20 billion more in programming expense to come. And then to remind you, that's essentially Disney. So what's gonna happen the next 5 years, this industry is gonna create another Disney in order to try to win the hearts and minds of all those consumers who are cutting the cord because the price is too high and they're not sports and news fans. So with that, I have time for some questions, and thanks for having me. Any questions?
Hey, Michael.
Yep.
How much do you think, in dollar terms, consumers will be willing to spend on subscription services in the next 5 years? And based on that, what percentage of streaming services launched in the past year and in the next 5 years do you think will still be around?
That's a really good question. There's this conventional wisdom that people want to spend 3 to 4 subscriptions, right? Our view is, if you look at the price of a bundle, $80 or so, $90 is a bundle price. We would say in our survey work, half of the bundle price is due to sports, okay? So I'd say the average American has $45 to spend on SVOD services. You would say then back into this 3 or 4 or 5. I think the question we've heard in the previous guest is, people have to pick lanes, right? You can't be all things to all people. I think what we're seeing right now is this gigantic land grab where people have not really refined their strategies. They just want to be all in. So to your question, I think we'll see the same people in place 4 or 5 years from now, but I think their ambitions will be narrowed. I think they'll just be defending their core business. When they don't have scale, there'll be small add-on services. I think you'll get to a point 3 years from now when people realize that the table stakes of playing this game is so high that we need to pare it back, right? Those slides, that slide showed you on program spending, no one, 4 companies can afford that type of cost escalation, right? It's not gonna be for everyone. So our conventional wisdom is the same. We think 3 or 4, which means that you really can't raise prices for a couple of years. Everyone's gonna be fighting it out to be one of those 3 or 4 services.
What do you think about the rise of live video on tech platforms like Facebook, LinkedIn, et cetera, plays in terms of the sports and news viewers? Do you have any predictions in terms of that? Yeah, we've been waiting, and it's funny because I heard Facebook say no interest. We've been waiting for one of the platform companies to really invest in premium sports. It fell to us
we could have to do another slide about how the power of sports has kept the ratings of these businesses really stable. I don't understand why these companies with massive checkbooks don't sign up for premium sports, right? You heard John Skipper is out there trying to, it seems obvious that the way you disrupt the business is not through entertainment, it's through sports. So at this point, it's Facebook's point of view. YouTube, I think, feels the same way. I don't see a very high degree of risk that the next set of rights will go to a platform company. And then on news, news ratings, maybe it's the president, maybe it's where we are in terms of America. But news ratings have been relatively strong, even with all the news that's out there. I think people do want some type of news editorial function. They want to hear from a moderator. But at this point, it's a great question. I don't see disruption happening yet. Disruption is happening in entertainment because it's much harder to get into this business on sports. The rights are not available. You've got to wait to 2023. And I don't see how a Disney or CBS or Fox will easily let those rights go over the top. It's going to be expensive, right?
You know how you had that slide that said where people found out information about the types of TV shows that they were watching. Whereabouts do creators and influencers fit in that percentage distribution?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I have it's a good question because the morning show, Jennifer Aniston, I would say she went out of her way to build awareness for that show, right? That everyone knew it was coming into Apple, but she was all over the place. I think in order to gain awareness, what Disney's done is one shortcut, which is the brands themselves built awareness, right? Just saying Marvel and Pixar and Disney, that shortcutted it. And I don't think there's a lot of companies in this world or a lot of influencers who have the ability to do it. So it's a great question. I've not thought about it very much, but I think that's the benefit that Disney has. And I think one of the answers why I think Warner or HBO Max will be successful is that they have pre-existing brands that people are aware of it. I've not done enough work on it to give you a great answer, but I think I'm seeing it play out by using the brand leverage of these companies to build awareness. Okay. Thank you for that question.
How you doing? You talked a lot about the service providers and how they'll benefit from the spend. Have you guys done any research in terms of specific companies, production companies, or conglomerates that you think are actually going to benefit from? I think if you add all that up, I don't know what it is, $50, $60, $70 billion a year?
I think, no, it's funny. There was a time a couple of months ago when William Morris Endeavor was going to go public, right? And the idea was, they're an arms dealer. And there's truth to that. I don't know if Wall Street's ready to buy an agency business, but we don't, it's going to be all the ancillary businesses tied to that arms race because you're in this perfect storm of people have to spend more. But I've done no work on it. We were looking forward to seeing how Endeavor was going to be treated by the marketplace, right? Because that seems like a natural, easy story. It's like, hey, it's just an arms dealer. Look at the growth. The growth is real, right?
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
So you're kind of doing all the math for a consumer out of their own wallet. Well, let's talk about the telcos, right?
Yep.
They're starting to give away these bundled. Do you maybe comment on that? Do you see the eventual where to a consumer it almost feels free? They were paying $160 for their Wi-Fi, their wireless bill.
Yep.
Times changed. It was coming down to 100, coming down to 80, but went back to 160 now because all the content's in there and nobody's even doing math anymore on that part of it.
Yeah, it's a great point. We had dinner last week with a former head of a pay TV network in New York, and he said what's really weird about what's happening now is when they worked in their pay TV company, they would offer free subs at the tail end of the platform's life. You would get it after 20 years of maturation. Let's do some free subs to trial it. You never would add free subs now. So Craig Moffett and I, my partner, we're very worried that we're conditioning the world to get great quality content for essentially free. So if your family has AT&T or T-Mobile or Apple, like we do, I can get 3 services for free in my house, right? That's great quality. And if I'm not a sports fan, then I have all reason in the world to slim down. So we're really worried that we're racing towards a cliff, and these free giveaways is trading. It's basically trading DVDs where people would pay $10, $15 for free, entire libraries of great content. It's a real problem.
I mean, it certainly puts people in the pole position when they're either owned by a 5G carrier or partnering. If any of you guys remember Beats and Music, to me, they kind of came out of nowhere because of their partnership.
Right, or if you're in the selling of the phone business. I think if you talk to people out here who are running studios, I think their big fear is some of the people buying the content are not, their day job is not monetizing content. And Netflix's day job is making money on content. But Apple and Amazon have other day jobs, right? And I think that's really a scary thought, that they're not aligned in the same way the business used to be, right? And you're right.
Kind of like newspapers and magazines, right?
Exactly. Okay, if that's it, thank you for listening to me, and speak to you later.